It's been so long since we've seen a true Batman movie, and I am happy to report that this one was awesome. If you are looking for a spoiler free review, you can click up here to check out my micro review of The Batman. But in this, we are going to be talking about everything that happened in the movie with all of the spoilers, so that's your warning, and let's start off at the beginning. This movie starts off with narration from Robert Pattinson as Batman, and he's speaking as to the impact that he's had over the last 2 years of being Batman. And with this, he's talking about how he can't be everywhere at once, but he is somewhere, and criminals think of him as kind of this boogeyman where he might be hiding in the shadows waiting to get you after you've done something wrong. So he's not everywhere, but he's kind of instilled this thought process in a lot of criminals, which I thought was a really interesting take, and I'm glad they explained the criminal mindset and how now that they're scared of the shadows that they're kind of thinking twice, or at least avoiding shadows. His introduction fight scene was also really, really well done, and I loved it because you felt the tension building up, and as these gang members were picking on someone, all of a sudden, at first, it started off really quiet, but you could hear a footstep, and then another one, and they started to get louder, and that gang looked back and looked at the shadow, and they were staring at the shadow for like a full minute until he finally comes out of it, and they then pick a fight with him. There's not a lot of shaky cam, so you can see exactly what's happening. The fight was really well choreographed, I think, and it felt like a real fight where he was actually hitting people, but he was also taking some hits too, but nothing that would stop him. And it also showed how, in his mindset, if you are not being a bad guy, you're not going to get your face smashed in. So that one gang member that didn't ever try to attack him and just kind of stood in the back, he like looked at him and the guy just ran off. So I thought that was really interesting, and it was also really interesting that even after he saved this guy on the ground, that guy said, "Don't hurt me," which I think was a big thing about this movie, and we'll kind of get to this in the end of it, but it kind of foreshadows how the public views Batman right now, if they even are aware of him, other than this, masked vigilante that's out there. Then we get the death of the mayor, which really kickstarts the plot of this movie and introduces the Riddler as the villain. And I love this because we really got Detective Batman, where he's looking at clues and really studying crime scenes to kind of figure out exactly where to go and what to do. And it's something we haven't really gotten great in live action. There was a little bit in the Nolan movies, but not to the extent that this was. And this was a true noir Batman detective where he's constantly trying to figure things out, which I thought was really interesting. The first riddle actually was my favorite, with the thumb drive, where it's very morbidly clever, and Batman and Alfred have to solve it, and then once they do, it leads them to the next clue. And I think that's a great take for the Riddler, because he doesn't just do riddlers, he's a villain, and he kills people and does things that are kind of morbid with riddles. Speaking of Alfred, though, I really loved Andy Serkis as Alfred, and I thought he did a fantastic job, and wish he was actually in the movie more. He wasn't really Batman's right hand in this, feeding him information and stuff. He was more like, "Bruce, you silly goose, you running around at night fighting criminals, you've got a meeting to go to today, get your ass in there." So he seems to also be kind of running the business of Wayne Enterprises at the moment, but he's not really helping out Bruce on his missions. I hope that once Alfred gets better from his injuries that he sustained throughout this movie, that he does become more of that right-hand man to Batman and is constantly feeding him a communication stream of information and helping Batman while he's out there, because I think that's an important thing for Batman, is he needs assistance and help from some people and needs that constant line of communication, which I thought was a great scene with Selena Kyle when he gave her the contacts and then had that kind of stream of information coming to him. The contacts were also really the only kind of piece of new technology equipment that we saw Batman have in this, but that being said, the contacts were awesome, and it was really cool how he could take them out and then analyze everything that he saw throughout the night and do more detective work and things that he might have missed, but the contacts picked up, which I thought was awesome. I mean, overall, the suit was probably my favorite live action suit ever. It looked really good. It had a batarang in his chest, which I thought was a really neat introduction to how he got a batarang and where he was able to store it so conveniently. And he had a bunch of other gadgets on him too, grapple hook and the wingsuit, which I thought was also pretty fun. When he did use that wingsuit though, he ran up to the top of the building and he looked like he was scared of heights. I don't know if anybody else felt that way, and I don't know if that was intentional or not, but he was kind of scared of heights is what it looked like, but then he kind of powered through that really quick, pulled out his wingsuit and, flew down to the ground, and then he hit the bridge and then fell on a bus and rolled into the street, and I just thought there is absolutely no way he just gets up so easily from that and kind of walks away. I mean, I know he had a little bit of a limp, but I mean, if that doesn't take you out, then I don't really know what else will. I mean, and he was shot a lot through this movie, and kind of through the whole time, he took a lot of hits through guns and general melee weapons and stuff. So, I mean, he was broken by the end of this movie, I think. We know this movie took place over the course of a week because at the beginning of the movie he says it's October 31st, it's Halloween, and then at the end of the movie he says, I believe it's November 6th. So it was a week, so I assume during the days he was recovering, and they just didn't show that because, it's more fun seeing Batman beat people up than it is watching him recover in bed. But I wish we had seen a little bit of his recovery and it didn't just immediately cut to the next scene of him standing somewhere fine after he got hit by a bridge, essentially, or got shot a bunch throughout the night. But I also thought it was really cool that they did show at the end he has that adrenaline in his pouch that he was able to give himself, which was really cool. And then obviously he went almost crazy for a second there until they pulled him off the guy. But that's interesting to see how far he was pushing his body throughout this show or throughout the movie, and just really on par with what I think Batman does, which is push himself way past limits of what people should be going through. Also, at first when they said October 31st, I was like, holy crap, are they doing the Long Halloween story? And they did not. It was not the Long Halloween story, but why start on October 31st? Like, why pick that date of Halloween if you're not going to do the Long Halloween storyline? I thought you could have picked any day around then and it probably would have worked. It didn't seem particularly special in context of the story to pick that date, but I mean, it was fine. I was just kind of wondering why that date if you're not going to do that story. Colin Farrell as Penguin was fantastic too. I didn't even recognize him under his makeup. I mean, I knew it was him, but like, I didn't know it was him when I was in the movie. It was just so hard to see through the makeup, which is perfect. That's exactly what you want. And this is kind of a Penguin origin story too, because he is essentially the second-hand guy right now and under Falcone, and he ends up at the end, Falcone dies and there's going to be a power grab. So I assume he's going to be probably the guy to end up on top, at least for the mob world. The chemistry between Bruce and Selina was also really good. I thought Zoe Kravitz did a great job as Catwoman. I loved when she broke into the house and picked the lock and showed her and her thief skills and her rappel skills, which was really cool. And then there was a bunch of funny quips a lot between Batman and Catwoman, and every time he showed up, he kind of spooked her, especially after the first time. They fought the first time, then every other time she's like, oh my god, you again, how'd you get here, how'd you find me? And I thought that was really funny and well done. And you saw at the end that Bruce did end up caring for Catwoman, and you saw it, at the very end when they had to part ways, and he had to think about it, and he did have feelings towards her and didn't want her to commit a murder, because I think he was trying to save her more than he was trying to save Falcone when she went to kill him. The end of the movie I thought was crazy too, because Riddler kind of won. I mean, he flooded the whole city. Sure, he didn't do a mass murder at the end of the movie, but I think the amount of damage that the city sustained from his bombs was enough to really, really do a lot of damage and kind of win in a sense. But I loved the scene with the henchmen that were trying to shoot people, and Batman ended up, hitting them off, and like with their grapples or whatever, they were hanging in the air, and it felt a lot like the video games when you take out all the henchmen on a building and then like grab them and then they're just kind of hanging there once they're knocked unconscious. I thought that was kind of a really fun scene. The end, Batman finally realizes, though, that he does need to be a symbol of fear to the criminals. He also needs to be a symbol of hope to the common person. And he ends up reaching his hand out and asking for them to, when in the flooded stadium, to grab his hand, and they end up following him, which is a really amazing shot from the top looking down of Batman in the front, leading a bunch of refugees up to safety. And I think it's an important turning point for the city, where now the city has fully embraced Batman as the protector of the city. And that's something that I think the beginning showed they did not, with that dude on the ground that I was talking about earlier, who was like, don't hurt me, because he didn't know who Batman was and they were scared of him. But more importantly, he realizes that he doesn't want the normal people to be scared of him. He only wants criminals. So he has to be seen helping out the common people as well, which he did at the end. And he was constantly, all throughout the night, bringing injured people to the medics, and everybody saw him as a good guy essentially at this point. I think the public perception is going to change a lot in the next movie of Batman, and he is going to be looked up as a hero to the normal people. But also the cinematography in this show I thought was incredible, and it had a very dark tone, but also somehow there was still a little bit of hopefulness in it and where the city could go to, which I thought was important. I also thought one of my absolute favorite scenes was the hallway scene that was only illuminated by the gunshots. And as he walked slowly down the hallway and he was beating people up as he goes along, there was gunshots that saw him keep getting closer. And to me, it was really reminiscent of Rogue One Darth Vader hallway scene, where he's just walking through, just mowing people down as they do everything they can to stop him from getting further forward. There were a couple things I didn't love in the movie though, so before this video gets any longer of me fanboying out over Batman kicking butt, let's get into the cons that I had about this movie. The biggest one is definitely that though I did love Robert Pattinson as Batman, and I thought he was great in all the Batman stuff, which was 95% of the movie, I thought his Bruce Wayne needs a lot of work. I mean, he's still kind of a sulky Bruce Wayne, and I think Alfred was really right when he was like, you need to keep up appearances as Bruce Wayne because you are still a Wayne. And I think an important thing to mention would have been like, hey, if you run this company into the dirt, you're not going to have any money, so you're not going to be able to be Batman anymore. So it is in your best interest to keep your enterprise going and keep your funds constantly coming in, because that way you can better help the city. And same with the mayor. When the mayor talked to him, was like, hey, your parents did a lot of philanthropy work, and why aren't you doing any? Because I think that's something he should be doing, and he should be making public appearances and doing things that help the city, not only as Batman, but as Bruce Wayne. I know this wasn't year one Batman, so he already has established relationships with people, but I wish we had a little insight as to why Gordon trusts Batman so much already, because we had pretty much no backstory on that, and nobody else in the police force really trusts Batman at this point except Gordon. So clearly one specific thing probably happened, or maybe a couple little things happened that made Gordon start to trust Batman a lot. And I wish we had seen a little bit of that, but I do know this was already a 3-hour movie, and I mean, cuts need to get made. I totally get it. So it wasn't a big con. It's just something I wish I had a little more backstory on as to why exactly Gordon trusted him so much. The last thing I really didn't get was why Riddler ever thought that Batman was going to be totally cool with watching normal people die. I don't feel like anything he had done previously to this had shown that he wanted to see normal people die. I mean, sure, he was taking out villains, and at the beginning, Riddler was only taking out villains too, and people who were corrupt, but then at the end, Riddler went crazy and he's like, kill everybody, it's fine, we're just going to level the whole town. Batman's totally going to be okay with this. I mean, I would have understood some misguided aspirations for the Riddler to be just killing corrupt people off, and he's like, Batman's going to love this, I'm going to take out the entire mafia and just massacre them all or something, but I don't feel that Batman had done anything to show that he would have been cool with murdering innocent people. Overall, though, I loved this movie, and I cannot wait for the sequel, and I know there's going to be one because it's not every movie that DC absolutely crushes it on, but they nailed it here, and I think the general consensus is that they nailed it, so I think a lot of people will be heavily anticipating the sequel. But I want to know, what did you think about the movie? Whether you agree with me or not, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I'm Keegs. I hope you've enjoyed my thoughts on it, and I will catch you all next time.